While newspapers are perpetually said to be, quote, dying, unquote, there are still newspaper comic strips, many of them legacy strips made by new creators. 2 years ago, King Features Syndicate decided to bring Flash Gordon back from rerun Purgatory with new strips, written and drawn by Dan Schkade. Dan was also the artist on Dynamite Entertainment's Will Eisner's The Spirit Returns in 2016, and is also known for his original work Lavender Jack, which ran on Webtoon. This week I talk with him mainly about Flash Gordon and some of the trickier aspects of doing a newspaper strip, including refreshing readers' memories and getting new readers on board while also moving the story forward a step every day. Also, in 2025, how do you handle a great villain who's also a terrible racial stereotype? First, as always, I'd like to thank our patrons for helping to keep the show going. You can pitch in by pledging at least $2 a month at patreon.com/deconcomics. This is Tim, and this is Deconstructing Comics. Now I'm talking with Dan Schkade in the Midwest. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. Well, I'll get to it a little bit later, but I want to thank listener Chuck for suggesting that I interview you, and he submitted some questions, too.
Ooh, all right.
And so Dan is working on the Flash Gordon newspaper strip, among other things. What are some other comics you've put out?
Well, in addition to the last 2 years on Flash, I did a Webtoon series called Lavender Jack that ran for 4 years.
Yeah, I read a bit of that last night. Like, oh, this, okay.
What'd you think?
It looks great. Yeah, it's just I didn't get very far into it, but it looks pretty good.
Thank you.
Kind of Agatha Christie-ish a little bit.
Yeah. One of my elevators for it in the pitch I turned in was it's a Daredevil meets Downton Abbey.
Okay.
Then the thing that I really broke into comics with was I drew Will Eisner's The Spirit for Dynamite with Matt Wagner writing and Brendan Wagner coloring.
Okay.
And then in between, I've done a bunch of little pickup gigs. A lot of stuff I forget that I've done. Like somebody mentioned me working for Valiant, and I thought they were referring to one Archer and Armstrong variant cover I did, completely forgetting that I drew an issue of the Unity, and it just completely fell into my file system.
Okay.
And what a lot of people also know me from is goofy, quick comics that I put online, which is sometimes kind of cerebral stuff I'm pretty proud of, like a comic I did called Twitter Cops. And then sometimes it's just a one-off, a one-panel comic where Saul Goodman is defending Magneto in court. Those are the things that spread Dandelion style.
Okay, so just kind of some idea that you had, you just draw it up and put it out on your site or on social media?
Yeah, Lavender Jack was every week for 3 seasons. Flash Gordon is every day. Mm-hmm. So it can be easy to just be doing the same thing all the time with the finish line always off in the distance. And so sometimes just banging out a quick comic where you got Adam West's Batman, but his Robin is like a Generation Z TikToker. And that's 2 hours of my life, and then it's done. And I get the little dopamine hit from it, and I go back to work.
Yeah, well, a daily strip sounds pretty challenging to keep up with. I've read a lot about Charles Schultz, and how he managed to keep up with Peanuts for 50 years with only one short rerun break late in the run. How have you been managing that schedule?
Well, the schedule is the toughest part, because what I try to do with Flash is pretty intricate, and every new element you put in a strip is a new opportunity for you to kind of hit a stumbling block or need to redo it or need to rethink it. So I don't really set myself up for success there. But, a deadline is a wonderful thing. And once you get into a storyline, once you've established the characters, there isn't quite so much pressure to nail it right away. So you can have some days where you're being a little more loose with it, just trying some stuff out. And that's usually where I make up my momentum.
Well, you talk about not setting yourself up for success. I've read the past 3 months of the strip.
Okay.
And I was impressed by something you did in the strips that ran this past June, where you've got Flash and Dale Arden and 2 other characters, and they need to get out of where they are. So they use these spatial discs, and each one gets sent to a separate location. I thought, wow, that's a gutsy thing to do in a newspaper strip where you get 3 panels a day, and you're trying to follow what 4 different people are doing in different locations. But I thought you did it pretty smoothly. And of course, Flash got most of the attention because he was dropped into the stickiest situation. But what were you thinking going into that plot development?
Believe it or not, part of me was thinking that it would be cool to do a storyline with fewer characters per day, where the characters were kind of off on their own. We'd also come off of this Kira storyline, which was really very Tim Burton, very kind of dark and tortury. And I liked the idea of each character getting their own separate plot line to realign themselves, recharge a little bit. Some of them, like Dale and Dr. Zakov, have relatively pleasant places they land in. And like you say, Flash is the stickiest situation, and the situation that takes the most time to unravel, because the comic's called Flash Gordon,
right?
And so
it's
we
not
should
Dale
never,
Arden, yeah,
exactly. Which can be tricky for me sometimes, because Dale is my favorite character, and I love writing her, and Flash is a very supportive character who oftentimes, like, he doesn't mind taking a more passive role while other characters are going through their own thing. So it can sometimes be easy to have a week where most of what Flash has been doing is kind of standing somewhere in the room saying something supportive. And so every once in a while, I got to make sure to put him, in the central spot of the action, where there can be no keeping space for other people. There can only be decisive action.
Okay. So how is the story development or pacing different between a comic book and a newspaper strip?
For me, it always comes down to units of audience attention, where in a comic, like a 22-page monthly comic, you have a lot more space to build and release tension, to kind of anybody who picks up a single issue is probably going to finish it. You can kind of count on having that audience. But trusting that at the end of the issue, you can pay off whatever you've been building. But a strip, every day is its own thing. Every day, my mission is to create a moment of engagement, of entertainment, a clever turn of phrase, a cool visual, interesting plot development. Like you have to feed the audience every day. So the stories that I'm writing, become stories where, like, every week, like 6 interesting things happen, and every day is one of those things. In the last couple of years, I started playing video games, which I never did when I was a kid. So like I started playing video games in my 30s, and I've been really interested in the ways that games will give you something to do all the time. So that even if it's nothing new, even if it's just going through a dungeon and clearing out the same enemies you've been fighting for a couple hours. They're at least arranged in a new way. There's at least some element of having a puzzle to figure out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I try to do with the daily strip, where I don't want the reader to ever be reading along day to day and feel annoyed that that's all they were getting today.
Okay. Now, I gathered that the strip had been in reruns for 30 years before it was relaunched with your work 2 years ago. So do you have any idea what led to King Features deciding to relaunch it?
Well, it certainly wasn't the quality of the reruns. I mean, Jim Keefe, if I remember correctly, did the Sunday strip up through like 2000 or 2003, somewhere in there. And it's really solid comics. But it just, as you say, it had been in rotation. King right now is in a spot where they're being really forward thinking about what they want their brand to be as we head into the further into the 2020s and the 2030s beyond. I mean, Flash Gordon turned 90 years old when I took over the strip. And I think, Flash is a culturally important character. He's one of the few comic book characters that there's a Queen album written about.
Yeah.
He has a certain amount of pop culture penetration, but there just wasn't anything that they had done with him in the newspapers for a while. There have been stuff like the great Jeff Parker, Evan Shaner Dynamite series with Flash. There have been little things, but I think that they especially T. Foner, who was the lead editor of the lead story editor of the King Features strips, when I was brought on, she was looking at all the properties they had and said, like, how do we make these work as daily comics again? Not just by emulating what was being done, in the 90s and the 80s, but in a way that actually speaks to modern audiences, many of whom consume daily strip size bits of information all the time on social media. So that those dual interests of wanting to capitalize on what they had, which is these great characters with this great narrative legacy, and an understanding that they have to have something, a new idea of how to package these things, because you can't just rely on a thing being classic. It also has to be in conversation with its audience.
It's I mean, a lot of people would say newspaper strips might be the worst way to go because, newspapers are dying and blah, blah, blah. But how do you respond to that? Do you think it's a weird direction to go in this day and age?
Well, it's a funny thing. Newspapers are dying, but I was watching the Richard Donner Superman recently, rewatching it, and there's a line in there about how newspapers are dying. Like, newspapers have been dying since the 50s, but they're still around
long before the internet.
Right. So I think that there's more to a newspaper than just the smudgy piece of paper that you buy in the grocery store. Like, a newspaper is a format in which news stories and comic strips and local interest stories are all kind of packaged together. Because a lot of the people who read my Flash strip have never bought a newspaper in their lives. They read it through Comics Kingdom, the online site, or they read it on USA Today's website, or so forth. I've actually never seen a newspaper that has my daily strip in it. I'm heading into my third year of doing the strip, and there just is nowhere around me that sells newspapers. And sometimes fans will send me pictures, which is fun.
So
I appreciate that.
Actual proof that it's appearing in print somewhere.
Yeah.
What do you have a sense of whether it's being read more online than in print?
I don't have numbers to back it up, but I would imagine, like, I don't know if there are more online readers than newspaper readers, But the fact that the online includes a digital archive where somebody who discovers the strip today can go back and read the last 2 years of it for like $2.99, I think is what it costs to get a like an unlimited subscription. That means that every new reader is a new reader reading hundreds of days worth of newspapers strips all at once.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a funny thing. Like, it's how do you measure an audience? Is it the number of times a strip is read, or is it the number of people who check it out when it's new? And I'm of the opinion that comics, any sort of printed two-dimensional art, it's a long-term game. You're building something people will return to for the next 90 years. And so by that metric, I think online's where it's at.
Yeah. Or it could be Peanuts, and then they put out a whole 50-year collection of your work in print later.
Yeah, that's the dream. I would love if the biggest audience for the strip was people who bought collections.
Yeah,
that's kind of my dream.
Designed by Seth on the outside and hardcover, and I was just for the listeners. I was just holding up the 1999-2000 volume of the complete Peanuts.
It's a great looking book. And Mad Cave, who are King Features publishing partner, they have been putting out these collections of the original Alex Raymond strips. And I think the intention is to keep going and do the Dan Barry and so forth. And they look pristine. If eventually my strip gets collected by the design people over at Mad Cave, I'll be a happy camper.
Well, I hope it does, because personally, I found the website, the King Features website, to be a nightmare to navigate. I did not like that navigation. Like trying to read 3 months of strips, it just didn't really accommodate that well, I thought.
There's some growing pains, I think is safe to say.
Yeah, they need to copy what Go Comics has done. That's easier to manage, I think.
I mean, that's the fascinating thing, the fascinating problem that King approached, because they rebooted the site last year. Is how do you make it accessible? How do you navigate this vast trove of content they have? And I'm positive they'll crack it.
Actually, a kind of good thing about it was that you could see many days strips at once on the page, where with Go Comics you can only see one at a time. The thing that I didn't like was, so if I got a page with 10 strips on it, there's a button to go to see what came before, but not a button to go forward that I could find.
I wish that there was. I'm with you there. I think that would be, because it does make going back through the archive difficult. There's a button you can hit that switches the orientation from going backwards to going forwards, but you can't link to it very easily. I think that when you're doing a sequential narrative strip like Flash, it can get kind of awkward.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a button that says see latest, but I'm reading 3 months ago. I don't want to see latest yet.
Right.
I see the newest first, oldest first there at the top. But yeah, I was scrolling up as I was reading. But
well, again, that's why I would love just to see it collected, because at the end of the day, it is. I do think comics work best in print. I think they work best when you can hold them in your hands and take in, with your peripheral vision, what's happening in the other strips. Because when I put these weeks together, I'm viewing every week as kind of its own, issue, I guess. And it has its own color story. Like every week looks a little different from the week before it. And part of that is because each of them is summarized in a Sunday episode, and the Sunday episode has to look good chromatically So that kind of gives every week its own distinctive color profile. But also it makes it so that when you're going through a week, it has a sense of place, a sense of like here's it's almost like a song, like a soundtrack. You feel when you reach the end of the week that you've kind of accomplished something, and that the next week will be something new.
Right, yeah, like when you had them going off to different places, you'd spend a week or two with Flash, and then the next week would be, where's Dale, what's she doing? So yeah, it did kind of feel like issues.
Yeah, and we tried something in that storyline too. This is more something for me to help me, differentiate the plot lines, where each of our characters, the narration of what they're going through is all based around a different physical sense. All of Flash's episodes, all of the captions refer to sound and sort of the biological experience of sound. All of Bach's stuff in Phrygia was sensory based. Dale's is all olfactory, and then Zarkov's he only has one strip and it's silent because his was going to be visual. But then I decided that instead of spending a silent week with him, we would kind of make it a little bit of a punchline and spend more time with Flash.
He looked like he was not in any kind of crisis situation at all.
Yeah, I don't know if I could have extended that storyline into more panels and still, be next to Family Circus.
Right, yeah, it was going to go that direction, and maybe printed in Playboy or something. So how did you get the gig of doing Flash Gordon?
Well, I was coming off of Lavender Jack. I was in the middle of the third and final season and sort of looking ahead to what I was going to do next. And I knew that T was she'd expressed, affection for Lavender Jack. And I reached out to her and said, I've been doing a weekly strip for a while. I feel like I've got kind of a specific skill set. And if you're going to bring back Rip Kirby, let me know. And then a couple months later, she emailed me to say, yes, actually, there's something we'd like you to try out for if you want to hop on a call. And I was looking at what they had, like the strips that were currently ongoing. And my best guess was I thought they were going to ask me to do Judge Parker. That's what I was thinking. My skill set, it seems like a storyline's coming to a close. Let's see. I had no idea it was going to be Flash Gordon. A character that I didn't really have that much of a connection to. I hadn't read very much of the original strips. I had seen the Buster Crabbe serials, and I'd read Jeff's comic, and I saw the 90s cartoon where he has a flying skateboard. And all of those are great. I love all three of those things, but I couldn't tell you much about the lore. So
you hadn't seen the 1980 movie?
I hadn't seen it yet. Or if I had, it was like, in high school, and I didn't properly remember it. I knew the Queen song well. Like I didn't know who said, dispatch War Rocket Ajax to bring back his body, but I knew that line. But I thought it was a great opportunity, and I liked the idea of doing something that was kind of out of my wheelhouse genre-wise. Like I had never done science fiction before. I'd never done a straight adventure comic before. All of my previous comics had been sort of mystery thrillers. I guess I did one Battlestar Galactica miniseries, but even that is like harder sci-fi. It's not, the more John Carter style sci-fi that Flash Gordon has. So I just started reading through the original strips, like starting with January 7th, 1934, and read through the first 10 years of Alex Raymond's time on the strip. and was just really taken with it, really taken with the kind of Game of Thrones element of it, how gnarly it is and kind of dark, but also very heroic in a classical sense. Like, I went into it thinking it would be like Buck Rogers, but it's closer to something, like Lord of the Rings. It's closer to like, heroic high fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So I formulated a pitch based around that, where instead of reinventing the wheel, I wanted to return to the original 1930s version of it and just inject modern energy into that. In fact, my original designs that I pitched them were like very Buster Crab, short shorts, costumes for everybody. And while they didn't want to go in that direction, while they wanted it to look a little more modern, I do think that the narrative decision to embrace the bones of it, sort of in the same way that Batman the Animated Series embraced the classic Batman tropes and just present them in a cool, slick, faithful way for a modern audience. I think that's what King was looking for.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Coming up, keeping the reader up to speed day to day without grinding the comic to a halt. How to recap strips you haven't drawn yet. What to do with a great villain who's also a horrible racial stereotype. And more. This podcast is part of the Deconstructing Comics Network, where we're grateful to our supporters on Patreon. Patrons get exclusive extra content. Pledge $2 a month or more and get Batman 66 podcast Bat Bits, where we're discussing writer and script editor Lorenzo Semple's Bat Notes memo, in which he lays out guidelines for writing Batman scripts. We've recently also discussed a TV Guide interview with Yvonne Craig as she was beginning her run as Batgirl, early versions of the scripts for Bookworm and Penguin episodes from Season 1, and more. At $4 a month, you also get our monthly show Silver Age Batman, where I'm moving through the book Batman in the 50s issue by issue, discussing each story and sometimes laughing at them, with a rotating second chair of Paul, Emmett, Patrick, or Kumar. Follow our Patreon for free and get access to the first 2 episodes of both Bat-Bits and Silver Age Batman. Check it out at patreon.com/deconcomics, and thanks for your support. Hitoshi Iwaaki's manga Parasite is a science fiction horror title with some comedy added for good measure. In the second season of Full Manga Alchemists, Patrick and I are discussing the story chapter by chapter. Parasite is one of our favorite manga titles, but of course nothing eclipses Full Metal Alchemist, which we finished our read-through of last year. But we're still doing occasional episodes on Hiromu Arakawa's classic manga. Recently we discussed whether The Dwarf in the Flask could serve as an analog for the dangers of artificial intelligence. Listen every other Monday on your favorite podcast app. Full Manga Alchemists. Now, what prompted Chuck to suggest I talk to you was that, and where what must have been on social media maybe, I expressed some frustration with a certain legacy strip whose current writer, in my opinion, does a poor job of reminding us what happened previously.
Okay.
And it feels kind of like someone just sliced up a graphic novel and is publishing 3 panels per day. I mean, we've literally had more than one case where a strip ends with someone asking a question, and the next day someone answers it without any context of what the question was.
See, I don't know what strip you're referring to, but I will say
the
that
initials are DT.
Well,
and I don't mean Donald Trump.
Well, it's a big pet peeve of mine when a comic strip feels that way. When it feels like you're just being drip fed. It's the same thing that makes me dislike when issues of a series just feel like a chopped up graphic novel. Because this is serialized storytelling, and every unit does need to stand on its own, even if every unit doesn't have to tell the whole story, but it should be something where where you could cut it out and put it on a fridge and people wouldn't be mystified by what was happening.
Yeah, I mean, so often this strip, I'll just say it, Dick Tracy, I'm just mystified. I mean, maybe I read the previous strip a day or two ago. I'm always running kind of behind on my Go Comics reading. But I kind of remember, oh yeah, there's this person and she's doing something. I get to the end, I don't know what happened. I can't, and it just seems like stuff kind of happens in that strip, and it's never really like exciting, and I'm kind of mystified from one day to the next. I don't know. So, but how do you manage that with Flash Gordon? With the Dick Tracy writer from 20 years ago had the opposite problem, where he was so intent on reminding us what happened before that it didn't feel like there was any progress at all. And like it seemed like a week would go by and we'd advanced like one panel's worth of story. So that was the other extreme. But yeah, how do you handle it? Do you have some kind of a guideline for how to keep people from losing the thread while still moving things forward?
I think it's a lot of fundamentals, like characters say each other's names a lot. And there's a lot of stuff that we talk about in the strip that refers to events that have never been depicted on panel. Like not even that have never been depicted in the original strip, but never depicted in my strip either. And that's something we did on Lavender Jack. It's something I do on a lot of the comics that I make, because it suggests a larger world that we don't see. So if you're told about something and you don't quite remember who the character is or how that plot point went, you've been trained by the narrative convention of the strip to not feel like you're missing out, to feel like you're just being like you're catching a glimpse of this bigger world. And maybe there is a whole storyline that explains it, or maybe it's just something I'm bringing up right now. But either way, it's something that gives texture to the story rather than puts up a roadblock. Because I don't want the audience to feel lost in the continuity. A big reason why I wanted to reboot the strip to begin with was because I wanted people to be able to jump in without having to have read the 90 years of Flash that have come before. I'm still reading through the 90 years of Flash. There's a reason that my stuff is so kind of relentlessly based in the 30s strips, is because that's the stuff I'm really familiar with. And as we go on, I'm starting year 3. If God willing, we go into year 4, there is stuff that was brought up in the Dan Barry and Harvey Kurtzman years that I would love to get into, to sort of let the strip advance in scope the way that the original strip did. But the last thing I want to do is just, I don't know, put people in a position where they feel dumb for not knowing what a lizard man is. Because I'll be honest, I don't think Flash remembers half of the stuff that happens to him.
There's a lot, yeah. It's hard to keep it. Well, you don't remember all the comics that you've done either, so yeah, it would make sense that he wouldn't remember all of the adventures he's had.
We've both been hit in the head a lot.
Now, you mentioned it before, but I was noticing too how you're using Sundays as kind of a recap of the week. And I guess it is tricky, right? Because some people might only see the dailies in the paper or only see the Sunday in the paper, assuming they're reading it in the paper. So, yeah, talk about that.
Well, that was one of our first conversations, was how they explained that to me, that some people only get the dailies, some people get the whole week, some people only get the dailies, only get the Sundays, and some people only get the bottom 2 rows of the Sundays.
Right.
So you have to tell a story that can either be told over like 30 panels or 6. And the workaround that I came up with for that, and I don't think I'm the first person to do this, but the idea was that every Sunday is told from a particular character's perspective, summarizing, but also kind of recontextualizing the events of the week.
Yeah, it gives us a different point of view of the same thing that we read in the dailies, but it still adds a little something to it because you got the point of view change.
It can be as simple as like the adjectives a character uses to describe another character, like a fondness, a bitterness. Sometimes some characters don't know each other's names, which is something that's fun to play around with. Because the Sundays also, for technical reasons, the lettering is a little bit bigger on those, so I have fewer words per panel than I do in the dailies. So you really have to get into like, how does this character talk? What contractions can I use? What, like, are they a polysyllable character? Dr. Zarkov gets relatively few of these because he just talks more, and I can't fit his dialogue in the panels. Because he just doesn't, like when I try to make him a very brief, a more curt, taciturn character, it doesn't sound like him to me. And I'd rather just not have him be in there than to have him be in there in a way that seems, incorrect. And what it also gives me the opportunity to do, since the Sundays have to be turned in earlier than the dailies.
I was going to ask you about that, if that's still the case, because I know in Schultz's day it was, but
definitely still the case.
So that's kind of tricky to recap something that you haven't drawn yet, or how do you handle that?
It is tricky. What has become the case over the last 2 years is more and more the Sundays become almost rough drafts for the week. Like I've learned to have the Sundays get across the general idea of the story, but not pin too many elements down. Like don't bog the Sunday down with the minutia that you're going to use the week to get into. Like what really matters is, like, the Sundays are essentially previously ons for, like, if it's a TV show.
Right.
We're supposed to condense everything that's like exciting and plot-wise relevant into 6 panels. And that's where, some character designs get worked out in the Sundays that feed into the weeks. And honestly, when I'm working out the plot, oftentimes having to write the Sundays teaches me things about what's important about the story. Or when I'm putting the Sunday together, I'm like, I can't fill the story on these 6 panels. So does that mean that I need to rewrite it? Does that mean that some stuff has to be condensed? Or is it okay that something happens in the dailies that's not mentioned in the Sundays? And depending on the week, some or all of those might be true.
I see. Okay, now I have to ask you about a character who I've seen mentioned and he's not there, and I kind of think I know why. Ming the Merciless. Who was really kind of this yellow peril character back in the 30s and 40s. And now I picked up that he's not the ruler of Mongo anymore. Is he alive?
He is, in our very first week of the strip, he is apparently killed. My run on the strip begins with what would normally be the end of a Flash Gordon story, where all the peoples of Mongo have come together and they launch this final attack on Ming's flagship. And we see Ming. He and Flash have a face down, and then events conspire to have Flash sort of thrown out of the ship before the final blow can be struck. The ship goes down in flames. Ming is presumed dead, but nobody can quite pin down whether or not that's the case. And the reason for that is twofold. The reason I wanted to do that, because the very, very first conversation I had with T about Flash was the Ming problem.
Yeah,
because Ming is like he's one of the best comic strip villains ever. which is, he's one of the great strengths of the strip. Like Max von Sydow's portrayal of him in the 80s movie is one of the most sumptuous villain performances ever. And Charles Middleton, I believe, is the actor who was in the Buster Crabbe serials, who had this almost like an evil Sherlock Holmes level of shrewdness. And then the further you get to the present, the closer you get to the present, you see different attempts to square that circle. In the 90s cartoon, he was like a green fish man. In the 2000s TV series, he was like a white South African.
Okay.
And then so that's the question. What do you do with Ming? How do you have this great presence, but not the Orientalism? And the solution I landed on was, let's just bite the bullet that his name is Ming. I don't want to call him the Emperor. I don't want to come up with a different name for him. He's Ming the Merciless. We're going to be fine with that. But we're going to throw out everything else that's Orientalist. Because an emperor, like he's Emperor Ming because at the time it was anti-imperial sentiment in America, against Japan. But you also have Roman Caesars. You have this different imperial tradition that's more Western, which has just as many gold sconces and bold red capes and glistening golden armor. Like you hit a lot of the same visual notes that the classic Ming has if you just make him like a Gaius Julius Caesar figure instead of a yellow peril stereotype. So that's one, the decision to move him in that direction, and two, the decision to kill him off right away, in a way that it's clear he's going to come back in some way. Like we're
It's
not.
like, oh, he's dead. Wink, wink.
Exactly. Like from week 2 or 3, a character says, "We don't know for sure," but I wanted to take him off the board because I thought it'd be really useful to remove the ultimate evil of Ming that serves as the thing that unifies everybody in the strip, and now leave them room to kind of turn on each other again. To
create story possibilities to get him off the board.
Exactly. And then the whole time he's gone, he was the ruler of this entire planet. And not just like he wasn't born into it, he conquered the planet, in decades prior. So everywhere around, there's, people are talking about him. They remember him. They were under his heel or in his military. We keep coming across these statues of him. Like you can't get away. And like I wrote the strip when we were still in the Biden administration, and I was noticing that about Trump, how like weeks would go by where like you'd never see him on the news, like there would never be a new thing, but you still talked about him all the time because he was just so like unavoidable. And Ming is the same way. He has a huge narrative presence in the strip, despite not being seen on panel in almost 2 years. And I thought, as a reader, I thought that was really cool. That the most terrifying presence in the comic is a guy that's not even in it.
Okay, I've still got a couple of Chuck's questions. Some of them kind of meshed with my own questions, but these next two are his. Any possible crossovers or team-ups like Defenders the Earth or even Buck Rogers?
Yeah, on the horizon for me is doing some kind of Defenders of the Earth story, which, if the listeners don't know, is the heavy hitter King Features superhero characters. Basically, you got Flash Gordon, the Phantom, Mandrake the Magician, and Lothar, and they had a cartoon, and I think that would be cool to do. And And every once in a while I think, like, is it time to pitch something like this? But the truth is that I like, the fan in me wants to do it, but the writer in me is like, I don't want to dilute what we're doing on Mongo. I don't want to dilute the narrative that we've been building, the interpersonal drama. And the fact that these three humans are aliens on Mongo, that they're the only humans on this planet, and that they're kind of stuck on this planet.
Yeah, and then if defenders of the Earth suddenly showed up, then that kind of blows that.
Exactly.
Oh, what's Mandrake? Oh, we got more humans here. Okay.
I think we might need to let it breathe a little bit more. The last thing you want to do is jump the gun for fan service reasons. Having said that, I do have a couple of crossover style things that I think would be really fun to do. One is, I think, like, so likely to happen that I don't want to talk about it. But one that's purely theoretical that came up when I was talking with Alex Garcia over at King was the idea of doing a Flash Gordon Prince Valiant crossover.
Okay.
With the Flash and the gang somehow ending up in medieval Europe and having a crossing over the science and the magic and
the spatial discs, maybe they take them there.
I definitely put enough stuff in the strip that, like, if we had to, kind of wink nudge our way into making a crossover happen without disrupting the main story too much, we could do it. I think that the most likely thing to happen is that Flash is going to stay in his own lane for at least another year or two, and then maybe we can get to something a little more defendery after that.
Okay. And Chuck's other question, will we ever learn Flash's true first name? I didn't know that wasn't his first name, but...
Yeah, in different versions, he has different names. In Jeff's version, it's Alex. Alex Gordon, and then Flash is his nickname because he's so fast on the field. Which in some versions, he's a football player. In the original, and in my version, he's a polo player.
Okay.
So there's a story that goes into their time on Earth a little bit more, that leads up to them leaving Mongo. And I think that if I get a chance to do that story, I think then we'll, reveal that his name is Henry or what have you.
Yeah.
But on Mongo, he's Flash. I don't want to. Last thing I want to do is have one of those just toothache-inducing scenes where a character really needs to get real with him and say, Flash, John, that. No, he's Flash. He's Flash Gordon.
Okay, yeah, that feels wrong. So, what do you think the future is for what we've usually called newspaper strips? Do you think the ones that continue will come to be thought of more as webcomics?
I think that it will be a long time before there aren't newspaper comics, because I think it'll be a while until there aren't newspapers anymore. And it isn't really a newspaper without the comics. Even just editorial cartoons. If you have a newspaper that doesn't have some kind of comic element, it feels wrong. It feels like a community flyer. For whatever reason, comics are kind of inextricable from the newspaper. And so if nothing else, you're always going to have, Garfield and Family Circus. You're going to have the heavy hitters. You're going to have Hagar the Horrible. And Flash isn't in every newspaper, but he is, he's still coming out every day. And I just feel like there's such a deep groove cut by the newspaper format. This understanding that there will be a new strip every day that's never going to completely go away. And I think that newspapers will always use that to sell ads.
Okay.
And
So
that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
yeah, at least like the larger city papers, I think have a little bit more of a leg to stand on. They keep going and keep. Of course, the New York Times never did have comic strips. I don't think.
You might be right.
So that makes them less of a newspaper in our eyes. But
Among other things.
so yeah, like I said, I started reading Lavender Jack. This has been a busy week, and I didn't even really get to preparation until last night. So I wish that I could have had more time to read it. But
No worries.
so Webtoon, of course, it's a very different format from a newspaper strip. You can do whatever you want to vertically. You got tons of space vertically. Do you ever feel, or did you ever feel more kind of constrained horizontally? You're stuck with smartphone width.
It took some getting used to. Lavender Jack is coming out in print through Dark Horse.
Okay.
We just finished production on Volume 1, which comes out in March, and I'm in the process of formatting Volume 2, which should come out around this time next year. And with Volume 2, which is, it was a year into it, I was really hitting my stride. I was looking at some of the like panning establishing shots or the cascading action scenes, and I was just like, man, I had such freedom. The horizontal is constrained, but infinite vertical space to work with. There was a minimum panel count I had to hit, but there was no maximum. And there's some stuff here that I was just reminded of the freedom, of the cool things I was able to do with that freedom. But it also means that, you can be paralyzed by choice. You have so much freedom that, you do sometimes become your own worst enemy with what you try to pull off with it. Whereas the newspaper strip, there is a ceiling on how high budget I can get with it. So, there's strengths and minuses. Really what I loved about Lavender Jack, what I loved about Webtoon, was it gave me access to a bigger audience than I ever had before. I mean, in total, there's, I think, 6 million views on the comic.
Wow.
There was 100,000 some subscribers. And it opened me up to a whole new demographic, an age range I'd never had before. And it was really wonderful. I'm very grateful for that opportunity, especially with a comic that's sort of outside of Webtoon's normal aesthetic as Lavender Jack was.
Not so manga influenced.
Significantly less. And that's part of why I was brought on. I was brought on during a period where Webtoon was trying to onboard a lot more American style comics. And I was the one classic guy that they allowed in. And I benefited from having a very good friend be an editor there who really went to bat for me. But yeah, it was very different. I think that's it's part of why it never became a huge hit on the platform, but it is why it got renewed a couple of times, because what audience it had were super invested in it. Because Lavender Jack is a mystery, and a mystery that's designed to be solvable. And the readers, the comment section, every week it'd be 100 some comments of people, citing, correcting my grammar, which is sometimes bad, but a lot of putting the clues together, and some of them solve the mystery ahead of time. Every season's its own mystery, and awesome. That's what I want, to have a readership that's engaged enough, smart enough, likes the thing enough to pick it apart like that. That's the dream.
Sure, yeah. Are you drawing electronically or on paper? How are you making your comics?
I've been purely digital for a while. just because it's faster. But I also really loved how much leeway it gave me to experiment with just like I love black. I love black spotting. I love the color black, and I love the crazy things you can just try to do with it digitally. As Mike Oming, who's one of the guys who kind of turned me onto it, said, when you're drawing digitally, it's always the pencils. Nothing is so permanent that you can't do something drastic with it.
I see.
Which can sometimes be, again, punished with too much freedom. But because for the first 5 years of my career, I was just drawing traditionally, and then my whole life leading up to that, I was drawing traditionally. I already had some habits built in of when to cut bait on a drawing, and I think that helped me not drown in digital art's infinite possibilities the way that some people do.
Mm-hmm. So you've done comic books, you've done newspaper strip, you've done Webtoon. Do you have a preferred format for doing comics?
Man, I love all of it. I drew a traditionally formatted comic earlier this year. I loved that. Reading back through Lavender Jack makes me want to, do the Webtoon format thing again. And I have other newspaper strips I'd love to do. I threw it out as a joke earlier, but I would love to do Rip Kirby. I would love to do a modern serialized detective strip, which would have a whole different set of storytelling priorities than Flash Gordon has. But I want to do that. I want to do that too. I have yet to come upon a way of doing comics that does not excite me.
Okay, well, that's good. I was surprised looking at your website to notice it says you're a member of the comics collective Helioscope.
Yeah.
So it surprised me because I know they're based in Portland, Oregon, and you are pretty far from there. So did you used to live in Portland?
I used to live there. I lived there for about 7 years, and I was part of Helioscope while I was there. I'm actually... Paul Guinan and I came up with the name Helioscope. They were Periscope previously. And then,
that's right. Yes.
Yeah, and then a different company called Periscope wanted to go after the Periscope app. And so to build up the case of them defending their copyright, they went after us. And so we had to come up with a new name. And there were other suggested names that I didn't like as much, especially because I was in my mid-20s and I had just gotten the chance to join this cool, like this studio that I'd heard about for years and years, and then right as I become a member, the name changes. Unacceptable. I'm not going to be a member of Monster Squad Studio or whatever the other options were. So Paul Guinan and I came up with Helioscope, which has a similar kind of sound to it and is a lot more SEO friendly.
Okay. Well, I bring it up because back in 2017, I did interviews with at least half a dozen of the artists there for this podcast.
No kidding.
So I guess I missed you that time, but
yeah, I must have been because that's I was there until from 2015 through the summer of 2018. So
okay, you were there, yeah.
Yeah, I was probably in some kind of early Lavender Jack pre-production deadline spiral.
Okay. So what's coming next from you?
Well, we're heading into year 3 of Flash Gordon. The storyline we're doing right now, this Tournament of Mongo storyline, is sort of our season finale for year 2. And it's going to sort of shuffle the deck quite a bit. So starting in November, year 3 kicks off. A lot of status quo shifts that I'm finding really exciting on the creative side, and hopefully people will as well. We have the 3-volume Lavender Jack collections coming out through Dark Horse in collaboration with Webtoon, of course. And those look awesome. Like the design work that Dark Horse put together is exactly what I would want. I actually pitched Lavender Jack to Dark Horse first before I knew about Webtoon, so that it ended up there eventually is really quite nice. That the pre-orders for Lavender Jack Volume 1 are up through, I think, November, and then that's coming out in March, which I'm really excited about. Oh, also, speaking of things you forgot you did, in December, there is an 80-page, I believe it's called The Startling Adventures of Santa Claus. 80-page one-shot of that, written by Benita Sereno, and I drew a cover for that. So it's a 1 in 10 cover. So if you tell your comic shop you want the, let me real quick make sure I'm calling it the right thing. If you there we go. If you tell your comic shop you want Startling Tales of Santa Claus 2025 Annual out through Image Comics, then you just might get my D cover.
Okay,
so that's what I have going on.
You mean they've got like alternative covers for the same issue?
Yeah, for every, if I understand that correctly, for every 10 copies a shop orders, they get one of my cover.
Okay.
My cover is a lot of fun. It's based off the old DC 80-page Giants, and also I just love drawing Santa Claus, so that worked out for me.
Okay. Well, I've now got Flash Gordon coming into my email, so I think I'll be able to. It's hard to I'll read a comic for the podcast, and then once the podcast is recorded, even if I really want to get back to it, I generally don't, because I'm trying to read the next thing. But coming in a strip at a time, I think I'll be able to keep up. So
cool. Yeah. Happy to drip feed you.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
My pleasure. This was fun.
You can read Dan's Flash Gordon strips at comicskingdom.com. Follow us on Blue Sky at Decon Comics. On Facebook, we have both a page and a group. Those are linked from deconstructingcomics.com, as is our YouTube channel, where our episodes are posted every week as videos of a single image. You can comment on our episodes on YouTube or on our site, or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com, or talk to us. Click the Leave a Voicemail link on the left sidebar of our site. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. The music backing the promotion of our Patreon is Change by Jazar. A strip whose pitch sounds insane happens to be one of the most highly regarded newspaper strips of all time. I'm talking about George Harriman's Crazy Cat, featuring the odd love-hate triangle of Crazy, Ignatz, and Officer Pup. Why was Crazy so gender ambiguous? How did Harriman's somewhat mysterious racial background influence the strip? Kumar and I discussed all this and more in episode 369 from September 2013, which we'll re-present here next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.